Awesome. Thank you, Kirk. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to share my screen is shared, how to share my video. I'm not sure I'll be able to do that, but um, maybe y'all don't care. Okay, we'll just not worry about that right now. Yeah, thanks, Kirk, for that introduction. Yeah, I would say caveat. Now I'm a mother to twins, and you can't really find me doing any of those things anymore except carrying babies outside. But it does give a whole new perspective on this work that I get to do. Like Kirk said, I've been working with the Conservation District since 2022. My focus now is stream restoration. Prior to working for the Conservation District, after I graduated from school, I worked with the Snoqualmie Indian tribe for 5 years in the ENR, Environment and Natural Resource Department, as well as the Government Affairs Department. So really learned a lot during that time from some amazing people and some really, really wonderful people that I had a lot of fun reminiscing about as I put together some of this presentation. So throughout this presentation, there'll be some references to the west side of the mountains, just because there's such great work going on over there, and it certainly applies to our plants over here as well.
Hey, Alex.
Yes,
If it works on your end, can you turn your video on or
I tried. Let's see.
oh, that's the okay. All right.
It just got really small. So let me try again. I'll give it a go again. Ah, here we go. Um, And there. Sorry about that. I feel good about technology, and then all of a sudden something like that happened. So thanks for bearing with me, everyone. Okay. So I also feel free to put questions in the chat. I'm gonna try and kind of go slow and try to pause so that if any questions come up, I'm fine with talking about it as we go through it. But we can also wait till the end. That works too. So here we go. So I moved to Leavenworth in 2019. I'm a proud resident of the Chumstick on Chumstick Creek. Um, the land I now live is the ancestral homelands of the Sinquis Pasquosa, or Wenatchee people. Their ancestral territory extends from the Cascade Ridge throughout what is now known as the Wenatchee Valley. They are still here, living and caring for the land today. The best way to learn about Indigenous people is directly from them. And in this day and age, tribal government websites are a really good first step to do this. This first part of my presentation, because we are talking about native plants and utilizing them, we cannot forget the people that have evolved with those plants since time immemorial and have cared for them for thousands of years. So here's a QR code. I loved how Michael did that last week. So I tried to incorporate QR codes throughout this presentation. And if for some reason you're watching this on your phone, I apologize, but this will be available via PDF probably in a day or two. So you can always go and visit that on our website and access, or just Google it. um, Confederated Tribes of the Coldville Reservation story map. This is a wonderful story map that they've put together about the history of the Upper Columbia, the ancestral territory of the Confederated Tribes of the Coldville Reservation. Here's another QR code. Once again, the best way to learn about Native people is from themselves. This is a really wonderful documentary of the horrible story of the Wenatchee people, the reservation that was promised that was never delivered, and due to a variety of reasons, but history that just is not often talked about, but is very important as we live in this place today. And it's good to know the history of place. It really informs our present reality and future decisions that can be made to rectify, um, you know, the past. Love those QR codes here. Again, please I'll try to slow down, sorry. Please take a second to scan the QR code so that you can visit these websites later. Both the Confederated Tribe of the Colville Reservation and the Yakama Nation have very robust natural resource departments that are working throughout both on reservation land as well as in ceded territory throughout our area in Eastern Washington. And they're doing amazing work that is not talked about enough. Um, for instance, did you know that the reason that we have coho in our rivers today is because of Yakama Nation fisheries? Coho was extirpated from our area in 2009. And due to the work of Yakama Nation fisheries, now we have a robust, though still growing, coho population in the Columbia and the Wenatchee and tributaries. So, as we know, this landscape is so different post colonization than what it was before. Um, both good things and bad have occurred through colonization, and it's really important to remember, though, as we talk about native plants and access and utilizing them, kind of how changed our landscape is. So here's a photo. This is from Snoqualmie Pass, Stampede Tunnel, the rail line going in. Probably the biggest landscape change I could potentially argue was done by the installation of the railroad. Um, Forests were clear cut, creeks and rivers were straightened, kind of amazing feats, phenomenal feats done by hand, but radically changed the landscape and altered, displaced people from the land, just uh, wiped away habitat in the creeks for fish and other wildlife. Just very different and changed. Here's some photos from our area in Shaston. Once again, railroad construction that's happening in 1927, so 100 years ago, as few as 100 years ago. I mean, one thing that when I think of the railroad, I often, and like when I look at it driving on the Chumstick or driving, through the Wenatchee Valley, I often don't think about the trestles that were backfilled and the amount of material that came from somewhere. Um, but I really, this picture really shows just how that topography changed with backfilling the trestles um, through the thousands of mile of railroad that goes across our country. Continuing on in the 1940s, the development of our valley that we live in now, Columbia Valley Development, together they can win, just really um, highlighting the rich abundance of natural resources in this area that were here because of the tending and care of the native people. And that was not recognized at the time, which, now we're really doing a lot of restoration work to recover from that. So just really wanting to emphasize the drastic change to our landscape. It's all tied together, and we'll get back to native plants here in a second, but bear with me. The history is so important. Here's a postcard from 1910 of Leavenworth. I couldn't really find, of course, photos. We don't have a great abundance of them, and what we have, you can't like choose what it is. So I really wanted a photo of Leavenworth, and luckily there's this postcard that someone had drawn. But even in 1910, the landscape has changed. The railroad is there. The river is drastically altered. With a mill, you can see kind of some of the mill work in there. And you can still, even with these changes, you can still see the water on the landscape. How I guess it's a little bit floody today, higher water. But that whole East Leavenworth, or not East Leavenworth, sorry, Ski Hill, it's a wetland. Um, Water was much more on the landscape and associated plants. that area of Ski Hill being a camas meadow. It's now all developed as homes, which people have to have somewhere to live, but that was really important harvesting grounds and habitat for animals too that no longer exists. Um, okay, so we talked a little bit of the history. There's so much more to know. Please visit those web pages I mentioned, and um, I'll go into it a little bit more too of some other resources in a couple slides. We won't, we're not leaving the history behind. But why native plants? Why are we even talking about native plants? Why do we want to cultivate native plants? Well, Michael and Mel did a really good job the last 2 weeks of going more into depth on that. So I won't go into depth, but I'll just mention again, native plants are adapted to our region. While they do require water for establishment, you can get away with not watering them in many cases once they're established, which is different than other uh, non-native plants and non-native food plants, honestly, in our region. Native plants evolved with native wildlife. This photo of some salmon here. Plants are really important to fish. um, One of the reasons that we don't have robust salmon runs anymore is the habitat degradation, and some of that being the riparian habitat, so the land that's adjacent to water bodies that doesn't exist anymore. Um, that's a whole nother talk. But if we want robust wildlife populations again, we need to have a robust native plant life as well, and a diversity of that. And then, of course, to kind of point back, why native plants? Well, native plants are important for that people-place connection. I firmly believe that people need to be in the picture, really watching these plants, that connection of people, plants to place. Otherwise, we really don't know what's going on in our forests, if they're healthy or what's going on with our wildlife. It's just a true sustainable restoration has people in the picture. And of course, culturally significant plants um, have been cultivated by people for thousands of years. Examples of this include camas prairies. Prairies, unfortunately, have dramatically shrunk in our landscape due to the removal of people, due to the removal of the fire practice, the coming in of invasive plants. Camas in particular really needs space, and it often get even this photo that I have here of a camas meadow, you can see there's some native plants in this picture. I can tell you there's also some non-native plants in this picture. But this is a really nice, one of our more intact camas prairies um, that unfortunately doesn't have fire on the landscape. And the fire on the landscape in camas prairies is really important as it clears away the chaff or the grass thatching, sorry, the thatch layer, so that the grass doesn't crowd out the camas and the camas has space um, to grow. The bulbs can lay dormant for a while. This is a little tangent, but they can lay dormant for a while, like many plants, but they really just, they need that light and space. Um, Huckleberry patches are another great example of plants that have been cultivated by people for thousands of years, also through fire. Unfortunately, these quality huckleberry patches are shrinking once again due to fire not being on the landscape. But we, of course, all love huckleberries and want them to persist. So I know that there's a lot of talk around more fire and huckleberry patches, and there definitely are folks doing that practice, and especially on reservation land. Um, Managing forests, burning forests for game, that's been done for thousands of years. Of course, we know that deer and elk love meadows, grass, camas prairies. And then other good examples of forest gardens that are often found near village sites, historic village sites. in archaeological digs. There's usually quite strong evidence of people bringing plants and planting them. This makes sense as, we're here as gardeners and native plant lovers, and planting them next to their home because you want the plants that you love to be close by to you, which is what we're going to talk a little bit more about today. Um, I guess I can't see with this full screen mode, I can't see any questions that come up. So, Kirk, if
I'm
any
I'm
does come
watching
up,
it, Alex. I don't see any yet.
okay, perfect. Yeah, sorry. Let me know if there is anything that anyone wants me to dive more into um, or just something that relates. Okay, so here we go. Why grow plants if you can wild harvest them? I mean, so we're talking about native plants. They're everywhere, right? Well, as we talked about already, no, the landscape has just so dramatically changed. There's also other reasons why, if you're going to utilize these plants in your life, why you should grow them or know more about them. Understanding the input. So if you're going to be eating um, some of these plants, uh, some of them do hyperaccumulate toxins. And if you're using that part of the plant, it's important to know that you're not ingesting something that will ultimately hurt you. Um, an example of this was, I guess, when I lived in Seattle, I had a group of friends and they were really excited because they were going to go harvest at Discovery Park, which one you're not allowed. It's illegal to actually harvest in King County parks. But two, biosolids have been sprayed all over Discovery Park and in some of our forest services as well. It's a common practice. But you don't want to harvest certain plants that have been sprayed with biosolids because there are some toxins that they can uptake. So that's just one example. Um, the focus on sustainable harvesting. Um, this is another great reason why you should grow your own plants if you can, or tend a plot. Um, Certain plants just should not be harvested in the wild. They have way too small of a population size, or the part that you might be harvesting, maybe the root, means that the plant will not continue to grow once you harvest it. Or it could be an important harvest area for native peoples, and access is so challenging already that we need to make sure that we're not harvesting in places that are, or over harvesting in places, especially too, so that those resources can continue to be available. Um, and then, of course, as Michael and Mel talked about, um, these plants are also used by wildlife. And I guess I mentioned before too, as we know, they're native plants. They've evolved with native birds and mammals and fish, and they need to have food for the winter. So one thing we'll talk about too in this presentation is sustainable harvest practices by plant if you are going to go out and harvest. And then um, and then just the fact that many of these wild plants um, do need tending is real. So once again, bringing people into the place. So, wild harvesting can be really great for some of these populations if we, have done some of our background research and it's not illegal to harvest. It's, not all those other things that I said. But like removing noxious weeds from certain areas is a great way to tend to some of these wild places, or yeah, just giving them more space. There's a really great book called Tending the Wild. Its focus is California native plants, but it's a really wonderful um, text about how people have tended to wild plants for thousands of years and why certain plants continue to be available today because of it. Um, and then why grow these native plants again? And the main reason why you should grow them if you can wild harvest is the reciprocity factor of utilizing this place. So, reciprocity is a relationship of gratitude, taking care of plants or animals, earth or people because they in turn take care of us. This is a QR code to a really wonderful story map that I was able to create with the Snoqualmie when I was working in with the Snoqualmie tribe. There's some really you can really dive into this idea of reciprocity in restoration. Um, and how we if we tend to the land, if we care for these plants, they'll take care of us as well. So, okay, great. You want to grow some native useful plants that might be edible, but in your garden. How do you get access to that? Well, of course, we have our native plant nurseries, such as Derby Canyon. You can collect your own seed and grow it out. It's another way. Another great way is actually transplanting plants that are in the wild. You want to do this responsibly, like I mentioned before, not and then you have to get it's really important to get a permit with the Forest Service when you do this. If you're going to do it on Forest Service land, it's really easy to do. And it's really the only way the Forest Service is able to track what resources are being taken off the land and how people are utilizing the land. Um, and this is really important because it can inform overuse. Has anybody in the audience gotten a permit from the Forest Service? This could be for huckleberry harvesting or mushroom harvesting or cutting down a Christmas tree. Um, Hopefully, your experience was positive. It once again is really easy to do. Um, and it just really helps our public land managers actually be able to manage the land, especially in this time of resource scarcity. They might not be able to actually go out and take a look. Okay. So now we're moving into the part of the presentation where we are talking about actual plants. So I'm going to go through a series of slides. It's going to have the plant on it. So the culturally significant plant in this picture is a Christmas tree, which is totally a culturally significant plant to our current culture today. We'll talk a bit about the growing requirements of the plant, some of the uses, and then any other tidbits that I decided to throw in there. Um, if y'all want to, if you could put some other ideas that you might have of other culturally significant plants in um, our current culture today in the chat and share your ideas with folks. And these culturally significant plants, they could be food, fiber, medicine, or spiritual plants. The Christmas tree is a little bit, it's not quite spiritual, but like secularly important, pretty iconic in our culture today. So more tongue in cheek than anything. Okay, so to start us off, one of my favorite tree shrubs, is the elder tree. Blue elder in our area, Sambuca caerulea. What a really fast-growing tree. Pretty impressive. Uh, Also very brittle. So when using it in your landscape, um, you can train it, you can break off the dead branches or even cut back a big tree. If you're like, wow, I didn't want this 30-foot shrub tree in my yard, you can actually cut it down at the base and the next year, I did it one year, cut it down at the base, and then next year it grew probably like 6 foot suckers. So it grows really fast. It didn't flower after I cut it back though, it didn't flower again for 2 years, but I was happy to see that it did start fruiting and flowering again after that. Um, Blue elder really likes full sun, but it can tolerate partial shade. It really likes the edges. It's an edges plant. It really likes well draining, moist soil. A lot of these culturally significant plants that we have, they're riparian plants. at least that I'm going to talk about these bigger ones that provide a lot of value. Um, of course, the flowers are really great for insects. I've seen not just bees, but also flies love them. This picture on the left is a red elderberry, but I really liked how it highlighted the um, habit of the tree. I tried to take one of my blue elder outside my house, but right now it just looks like sticks and snow. So it wasn't a great example of that. Um, but yeah, in blue elder, you don't use the berries. Traditionally, people did eat them, but our palates are really different now, and there's a very specific way that you need to process red elder. But the flowers of red elderberry can still be utilized. You just have to dry them. They don't smell very good when they're fresh, but if you dry them, they do take on a more fragrant quality. Our blue elderberry, though, of course, is such a rock star. It smells so great when fresh, when dried. It also smells phenomenal. Um, a harvest tip, both in your own landscape or if you're tending to a patch, um, only harvest what you can reach. These trees, they do get quite tall, or not quite tall. I guess they can be maybe 20, 25 feet. Usually what you see is more like 10 to 15 feet. But it's really hard to reach a certain point, and that just preserves flowers for insects and berries for birds, because birds do love them, and they're really nice because they persist into the winter. The berries, they'll hold on if they don't get eaten so that birds can eat them as needed through the winter. And a processing tip, this is the bottom photo on the right here. You really want to freeze the elderberries before garbling the berries. And so garbling is when you're trying to remove the berry from the stem, and so there's no like plant material in it. Freeze the whole, so you clip it, freeze the whole berry head in just like a chest freezer or in your freezer in a paper bag, pull it out, or whatever, a plastic bag, any bag, pull it out, and then they really easily come off, and your hands don't get all goopy and sticky. Um, and then, of course, with blue elder, um, the seeds are toxic, so it does need to be cooked. The berries are not, for our palate, anyways, they're not tasty, they're not sweet enough until after you process them. They do need to be cooked. My favorite use is peach elder pie. It's the best pie ever. Also, elderberry, elderflower syrup is hard to find, so you have to make it most of the time. I doubled on elderflower syrup, but elderflower syrup, so good. I recently came across a elderflower peach pie recipe, which I'm excited to try this spring. Wild rose. In our area, we have Nootka rose and the woods rose. So Nootka rose, it needs a wetter habitat. It gets pretty tall, and it does spread. It can spread pretty vigorously. But on this left picture is the Nootka rose. It has beautiful large hips, and the hips are what you want. They're so delicious after they freeze. And they can be used in a lot of ways, which we'll talk about later. The woods rose, another awesome native species of rose. You can get away. It's a more upland species, so it can be a bit drier. And it's a little bit of a smaller rose species. The Nootka rose can get tall, like 5 to 6 feet, where the woods rose can get that tall too, but normally it's really small. Um, Rose can be propagated by cutting, so that's a really easy way. We're not going to talk about that today, but it's another great way to propagate native plants. Um, you can Google it or email me, whatever, talk to Mel. Um, but you can just basically take a cutting of the plant, roughly 10 inches, making sure you have multiple nodes, and then plop it in a pot with soil, make sure it stays wet and it'll root, and you can grow your own plant that way. Um, Rose does need full sun to part shade, and it can tolerate a variety of soils. If you are going to harvest the flowers for utilizing them in medicine or food. The tip here is to leave at least one petal on the flower head so that pollinators are still attracted to the flower. So you can, this picture here is of a woods rose with a little bee, bumblebee on the flower. And my favorite way to use rose is making a jelly. So good. Both a rose hip jelly or a rose flower jelly. You can make a syrup. You can have rose petal tea. There's so many ways. But I love a good rose jelly. Um, Easy to make, and you can can it and it lasts, which is really nice to bring it out to a party, or also in the dead of winter, just to have the floralness of those rose petal jam in your fridge. It's a good day. The next plant that people typically wouldn't plant in their garden, but I say why not, is nettle. Some might call it stinging nettle, but so nettle, Urtica dioica, dioica. Um, and nettle is a really good plant. If you're going to eat it, you want to know what the inputs are. In our green leafy plants, those toxins are often accumulated in the leaves. Um, and that's what you're eating when you consume nettle. So, a really good reason to have your own patch, grow it in a pot, grow it at home, um, or tend to a patch that you know is not near a road, um, and not near any weird land practices. Nettle does need seasonally moist soil. And like I mentioned before, it can spread vigorously by rhizomes. This right picture on the right is the nettle stems after it's gone dormant, um, because nettle is a great fiber. If you're interested in fibers at all or plant technology, plant uses, nettle fiber is very strong. Typically, you harvest the stems in late summer to fall. But like I said too, it's kind of like every part of the nettle is great. Nettle tea, you can dry the nettle leaf um, and stems. And if you dry it well, it'll last for a long time, and the stinging hollow tubes will actually stay intact. So if you reach into a bag full of well-dried nettle, you might still feel a little bit of stinging. Um, and nettle leaves, you can use it in so many different recipes. Just replace it for spinach in any recipe. It has a much higher iron content. And you can wow your friends by eating it raw too. Or in pesto. All you have to do, in pesto, you put it in raw and in the blender, and it breaks up all those little hollow tubes that exude the histamine, which is what makes it stinging. But if you grabbed it, which is a fun activity in the spring. It reminds you that you're alive, I think, because sometimes you do brush against it and still get stung. But if you just press it with intention and grab a leaf, press it with intention, you push down those hollow tubes that exude the histamine, and then it doesn't sting you. So you can press it with intention, press it again with intention, do it again, roll it into a little ball, and then pop it into your mouth. Is a pretty fun way to eat some of those spring first leaves that you see in spring when you're really excited to see your friend nettle. The next plant I have here is fireweed, and another plant that folks might not think, oh, I want to plant this in my yard. But I love fireweed. So many uses. It has a beautiful flower. The leaves are beautiful. The color of green of the leaves and the stem. I just think it's really beautiful. It's very vigorous, which is great too if you're going to use it. And then it's really pretty even late summer when it goes to seed. It has like really fluffy seed heads, which is it was quite fun, different to see that kind of fluffy seed. Fireweed does like full sun and moist, well-drained soil. I wanted to include this photo on the right because I think it was Mel that was talking about aphids on plants. Insects love fireweed. It's a deliciously succulent plant. And often late season, if I go out harvesting fireweed, this is sometimes what I see, which you do want to if you're harvesting the fireweed, the cool thing is you can really sustainably harvest from a patch. Um, and this is by starting, so you have the flower head, and below the flower head is kind of where the leaves, and at the bottom, you don't really want those bottom leaves anyways, because they're usually more desiccated. But you can, while the plant is standing and still up, you can run your hand along it and strip 6 to 8 inches of leaf on the fireweed because you're just going for the leaves. You don't want the flowers. The leaves are the good stuff. Um, and that's a really great way to harvest it sustainably, where you're not cutting it, you're not removing the flower. Um, I will say the leaves are utilized by a lot of larvae. I've seen some beautiful caterpillars eating the leaves in high place in alpine areas. So you do, that's another reason too why not you're not taking all the leaves as well. Um, and if you are going to grow this in your yard, though, like I mentioned, just know it can spread rapidly by rhizomes and overtake some of your other areas. So as I alluded to, there's lots of really great ways to use fireweed, fireweed tea. A lot of these plants that I'm talking about today too it's cool because they're circumboreal, meaning you can find them all around the world. Cultures all around the world have used these plants for thousands of years. Um, Ivan chai is a Russian fermented fireweed tea. And it's delicious. It's a really easy way to make kind of change that flavor profile. This upper left hand picture is the dried balls of fireweed. All you do is the fresh fireweed, you take it and rub it together. So you're kind of bruising it. And then you let it dry and you let it ferment for a couple days and then dry it after that. And it just creates a more robust flavor. Um, and then also, fireweed is a great fiber plant. You want to harvest it in the fall after the stems turn brown. Um, the stems will be green all season, and then late summer, early fall, they turn brown and they get more woody. And that's when you really can get the good, strong bast fibers. And then another fun way to eat fireweed and other herbs, and not just fireweed, but I really love it in the honey, is a fireweed miel. And a miel is basically powdered plant material mixed into honey. So you heat up the honey and slowly mix in your powdered plant material so that you're getting kind of a herbal paste. And then you can use that herbal paste on anything. Toast is what I like to use it on, but you could use it on other things like I don't know, I can't think of anything else right now because I just use it on toast. But it's a really fun way to incorporate herbs into your food in a different way. Okay. And where would I be if I didn't mention willow? Um, I believe in Washington State, we have 27 different willow species. Um, it is such a giving plant. Um, this picture on the left, it's a video, so I'm going to play it here. 1 second. Wow. So you can see all the insects buzzing around on those willow flowers. Um, Most people don't think of willow having flowers, but right now they're starting to flower. Amanda, I drove by your house today and I saw your giant willow trees are starting to flower out. It's so beautiful. And willow is such an important early season plant for our pollinators. It's really the only thing in flower right now. And they're waking up and really hungry. So willow for wetter sites, or places you can add water, my favorite is Sitka willow. Coyote willow is also another great one. And of course, peach leaf willow is another one that we don't really see too much over here. It's more eastern, but it's a great plant. And then Schooler's willow, if you have a drier, more upland site, um, is the willow species you want to go with. These willow species, they need full sun, but they can tolerate a wide variety of soils. Um, if you are growing for height, though, if you're going to use the willow for basketry use, for instance, you will need to irrigate annually, even if you live in a wetter place. Um, and willow are really they're wonderful, 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 but they're really wonderful because they're so easy to propagate. You can once again start them from cuttings. Most woody plants you can start from cuttings. The success rate varies. Willow, you will have a very hard time unless you completely neglect it and don't water it at all summer long. You'll have a very hard time not being successful trying to grow it from cuttings, um, which is so wonderful. Makes it a really accessible plant to propagate because you want to propagate it because it has so many uses. Um, Medicinally, willow bark has been used for thousands of years. It was the original aspirin and still used today. It actually, how I like to use it is once again in a syrup, a honey syrup. If I have a little headache and don't feel up to really taking an ibuprofen, I start with that. And all of the willow species have that medicine. I will say not all of our native willows are great for basketry. So if you are wanting to maybe do more crafts with willow, the bottom right picture is hoops. They're really great for making wreaths, ornaments, anything. They're so great. But you want a really flexible willow. So Sitka willow, the peach leaf willow, the coyote willow, those are great native species for basketry or weaving of any kind. Unfortunately, the Schooler's willow is very brittle. So while it's a great pollinator plant, still has that medicine in it. If you can do fencing, you can do all sorts of things still with that schooler, but it's not the best. It's not the most pliant. Um, so yeah, and we use it all the time. We use willow in restoration all the time because it's so easy. You can just stick it. It's so affordable to just stick a stick in the ground, and you're creating good habitat. This top left photo is at our restoration site, and that willow that's in front of that person, it was started as a cutting, um, and it grew tall, and I think it's around 4 years old, and where it just started as a 3 foot tall cutting that was put 2 feet in the ground and it's allowed to grow. So can't say enough how great willow is. Um, it's a great plant. Okay, serviceberry, also known as Saskatoon, also known as Juneberry, also known as probably another name I'm forgetting, Amelanchier, alnifolia. If y'all know of any other names of serviceberry, feel free to put it in the chat. It is a wonderfully giving plant. Serviceberry really likes full sun and can tolerate part shade. It's a really hardy plant. It can tolerate a wide range of conditions, but it does prefer well-drained soil. It doesn't do super well with wet feet. It has delicious edible berries that are really good dried too. The wood of the plant is hard, straight, and flexible, making it really great for tool making, digging sticks, walking sticks. If you're into spoon carving, that'd be a fun way to try it out. And then there's actually quite a few different native varieties, which is pretty cool. That goes back to all the different range of conditions it can tolerate. And once again, serviceberry you can propagate by cuttings. Camas, Camassia quamash, Camas is such a wonderful plant, and camas specifically would be more one of those plants that you wouldn't want to harvest in the wild. Once you take it out, you take the bulb, and it's not going to grow back. Seed collecting is a great practice for camas because it is pretty easy to grow, which is awesome. Camas does need full sun to part shade, seasonally moist soil. Like I said, it's easy to start from seeds, sow it in the fall. You can use basically a pure sand medium I've had success with, as long as you make sure you have enough room. So when I did the pure sand medium, I did grow it in 10-inch containers, so that it had lots of room to grow the bulb, because it does move depending on the season, moves in the soil column, and it needs to go down deep, to do well in the winter. Um, so yeah, and then if you are going to grow camas to eat. It is a delicious traditional food. It does need to cook for a really long time. So the modern way to do it today, if you don't have a pit cook at your house, though that's a really fun practice with a group of friends, or your family. But an easy modern way to cook it is in a crock pot. It needs 48 hours to cook. If you eat it before the sugars process, you get an upset stomach. There's this really great quote from Meriwether Lewis um, in his travels. The Quamash is now in bloom from the color. At a short distance, it resembles lakes of fine, clear water. So complete is this deception that on first sight it could have sworn it was water. And so, as maybe you've heard too, the Lewis and Clark expedition, at one point had extensive stomach cramps from eating undercooked and ill-prepared camas. But it was so good when they had it prepared correctly that they wanted to cook it for themselves, I guess, and just didn't know quite the technique. But it is a delicious plant. Also a wonderful wildlife plant. And once again, camas really needs people and fire to thrive, maintain those environments. Dogbane hemp, um, Amphicinum cannabinum. What a lovely plant this is. I cannot tell you how many hours I've spent driving around trying to find this plant. It has been removed from the landscape in a lot of places, because it is such a strong fiber plant that when orchards or ag are we're going to like prepare the land, specifically ag, I guess, tilling year and year. Um, the if the stem gets bound up in the tilling agent, it'll break the machine. So this plant is has been removed from our ag landscapes, because of that interaction, I guess, negative interaction with the equipment. But it really speaks to how strong of a fiber plant it is. Dogbane hemp needs full sun. It can spread aggressively, but I've also seen it not spread at all. So, depending on your soil, which it can tolerate a wide range of soil, I've seen it even in Wenatchee growing out of a parking lot. Um, that doesn't have a lot of moisture. So really, really wonderful plant again because of these fiber qualities. So this top left photo, dogbane and stinging nettle nets that are made for fishing. Um, Really strong materials. These are 300-year-old nets that are still in pretty good condition from what I can tell from the photo. And then the traditional use of the dogbane hemp is making these root harvesting baskets, Sally bags, um, by our um, twining. And they're just beautiful bags that you can see at Yakima Nation has a really wonderful museum and cultural center that has a lot of these bags on display. and other cultural centers, of course, too. But that might be the closest one to us. Oh, the Columbia, the museum in Kashmir, as well, is a really another great place to look at some of this stuff up close. And if you were to harvest um, the stalks of dogbane hemp, it's so strong that you can harvest it in the winter. You really want that natural retting of the stalks to occur so that it's easier to process the material. Okay. Oregon grape. Oregon grape can tolerate drier soils. And there's three different species in Washington. A really great evergreen plant year round. It has its leaves and it spreads via rhizomes. Their berries are really tart. You definitely want to process them. Our taste buds just don't like them anymore because we eat sugar, but makes a really delicious jam. The roots are medicinal and it's a really great dye plant. Wapato, this is the last plant I have here, and I really wanted to include it. It is a wetland plant, Sagittaria latifolia. It does need to be in water, shallow water. You can grow it though in a pond or a bucket. So if you have a little pond feature or a bucket at home, um, collecting seed can be really difficult in the wild, mainly because where are populations of Wapato? Um, they propagate really readily rhizomatously, and they need full sun. Here's a really good QR code of a great example of Wapato persisting in the environment and water. So it's an irrigation ditch that was used for a bunch of different purposes and on Yakima Nation Reservation. And basically, it was dormant for 70 years, and they added water again to this area, and it came up. So it persisted despite all the land changes and the hydraulic changes. Somehow it survived and is now back in traditional Yakima Nation territory. Um, like I said, this plant used to be abundant. We have Wapato Point, Wapato Lake, the city of Wapato. And now I have not seen a local population. I don't know of a population. Please put it in the chat if you know of a local population. I would love to be able to collect local variety, a local plant material, because I just don't know to use in restoration sites and to grow this plant out a bit more. And I just haven't been able to find a population in Chelan County. So please, if you know of one, um, let me know. And um, if you do know about that Wapato, please give me a call, send me an email. If you have any questions or thoughts about anything that I presented today, I'd love to connect with you. Or, like I said, my current work is stream restoration. If you live on a body of water and live in Chelan County, we do restoration work on along water bodies. So please hit me up. And thanks for having me today. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Yeah, if anybody has questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat. Yeah, while you were talking, I was drinking fireweed tea.
Nice. Now you have to try the Russian version, the
Well,
ferment.
that's what, yeah, that's the way I make it. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Good to
Yeah.
hear. Yum.
Okay. And some thank yous coming in. I don't know if can you see the chat,
Oh,
Alex?
I can now.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
I close my screen. Yeah, thank you. Oh, good. Someone has done the permits for Christmas trees. That's good. Yeah, it is hard. We have pretty crowded forests, but that's okay. You're helping thin those forests out, and you can have a Charlie Brown tree. It's pretty fun. Oh, great. Thanks, Debbie, for mentioning that. Yeah, so the Arbor Day plants that are will be available on April 11th. Um, woods rose is one of them. So that's awesome, Debbie. If anybody's interested in growing woods rose, it'll be for sale on the 11th, which look at our social media for more information.
Somebody asked about the process for making the chai, the fermentation process.
Oh, yeah. Of course, like anything, a good Google I would highly recommend. But it pretty simple. There's a couple different ways you can do it. But basically you could do it individually by leaf, or you can do it as a big group, and you basically just massage it and get it I'm blanking on the word, but you're basically have you ever made a kale salad where you're massaging it and bruising it?
Bruising the leaves, yeah.
Yeah, bruising it. And then from there, you ferment it. So you put it in a jar with a lid loosely on for 2 days or so, and then let it ferment a little bit. It'll smell really nice and sweet. And then from there, you take that material, you can roll it into individual balls or just lay it out so it's leaves and dry it. It's great. Pretty fun. Like I said, most of these plants are available globally, which so it's really cool to see how other cultures have utilized and people have used these plants and used them. So yeah, thank you.